Hi, Andres. We're going to wait a couple of minutes till everyone else jumps in the call and we'll begin, okay? Right, everybody, we're going to continue on this week's session on the speaking section of the test. So if you all could turn on your cameras, I would appreciate it so we can begin. Sweet, thanks. Just David and Jose. Sweet, cheers. All right, so yeah, today we're going to continue with the methodology part of the speaking section of the first task. Yesterday we had some practice. It was really hands-on, and yeah, everyone was doing quite good. Was doing quite great. You still have some pointers that you need to practice on that we're going to be polishing tomorrow, hopefully. So yeah, but other than that, it was actually pretty good. It was a pretty good first attempt. Right. So today we're going to continue with this section. We're going to look at the questions once more, and we're going to give some tips on how to do your note taking, how to prepare your answer, what to do in order to make the best of our time, which we saw yesterday was the hardest part, right? Actually, managing our time and managing the pacing on this one is the toughest, I think. Right, so I'm going to share my screen, and before we begin, do we have any questions? Or any comments, perhaps? No, it's not this one, it's this one. Right. Right, so do you have any questions or any comments before we begin? Someone wants something to say about the speaking section. Right, cool. So this is something that we saw on Tuesday. So we already went through this, but we're going to go through it one more time so we can get used to the styles of the questions. So basically all of them, what they have in common is that they ask us to take a position, right? To form an opinion and to basically establish reasons to support that decision, right? Whether we agree or disagree with something, we choose between 2 or 3 choices. Sometimes there are 3 choices, and whether we think something is a good idea or not, right? So yeah, so basically the wording is slightly different. So the way you start your main idea also changes according to it. So usually they agree or disagree. They're pretty explicit. They say whether you agree or disagree, or do you agree with the following statement. So what's the important part? The important part is always the one statement, the one sentence here that you have to form an opinion on, right? So in this case, it's whether teachers should assign daily homework to students, or whether children should help their parents with household chores as soon as they're old enough, right? So you have to say if you agree or disagree. This one is pretty good. So basically, why we're going through this again, because one thing I saw yesterday is that many of you struggle with your main idea. It got better the more practice we got in, but some of you are still struggling with just getting the main idea off the bat really quickly. So a good trick for this one, a good tip, is just look at the wording. Just basically look at what the question is asking you to do. If they're asking you to agree or disagree, then just start with that. Some of you start with, okay, so so you're losing a couple of seconds that you're probably going to need towards the end of the answer. So just go as soon as they tell you. So you have 45 seconds to answer the question, starting now. They give you, so you just. I agree with that teachers should assign daily homeworks to students, or I agree that children should help with household chores as soon as they're old enough. So just start straight off the bat. If it's an agree or disagree, if you agree or disagree, just say, I agree or I disagree that teachers or that children. So, or in my opinion, I think it's good that teachers are assigned, or in my opinion, I think it's good that children should help. Just have something prepared, right? Just go with what feels more natural. But have something prepared. You know they're going to ask you about your opinion there, so you have to choose something. So just have a prepared phrase for that. Just say, I think it's a good idea, or I agree, or I think it's good, or I don't know, something else that you may think of. But just have it as a habit, right? Just do it off the bat. Just start as straightforward as you can, basically. In the per choice, similar, but yeah, so basically they ask you to choose between 2 or 3 options. So for example, the first one says, do you prefer to study for tests in a group or to study alone? This one is easier, because what you have to say basically is, I prefer to study for tests in a group, or I prefer to study for tests alone, right? Just go straight for it. You don't have to, I don't know, just be cordial or just do anything beforehand. Just go straight for your answer. Just, I think this is a good idea. I prefer this, or yeah, or I think it's good. I think it's better to study alone or to study in a group, or I think it's better to watch television news every day. So just read your instruction here, and you should be good to go. And it's the same thing with a good idea. Basically, they give you the wording, right? So I think it's a good idea to that some companies have rules that forbid employees from using personal cell phones during work hours. Or I think it's a good idea that some people use surgery to look more attractive. You can rephrase it, you can reword it, but if you just read the main sentence, it's good. It's good to go. Okay, so that's my main tip for you that are struggling with it. So yeah, just go straight for the main idea. Just get it off the bat. Just gain some time, because yeah, you are going to need it. And you saw yesterday that sometimes times fall short for the second reason and the second example. So the sooner you get the main idea out of the way, the better. Any questions or any comments regarding this, perhaps? Right. So that's my main tip. Just go straight for it. Don't say well, regarding the situation, I think, well, I mean, some people do, and I've heard some examples, especially in yeah, I was reviewing some YouTube videos as well to just compare what other people do, and some people think, well, I think it's a good idea that it's a good way to start. I prefer to go for a more straightforward answer, but if you feel like, I don't know, just sometimes you need some time to think of the example, for example, and you think while you're speaking, so you can always use, but my main advice is have something prepared beforehand, right? Just have something that you know you're going to go straight for it. Just it's like a script, basically, right? So I think it's a good idea, or I don't think, or in my opinion, it is not a good idea that, or in my opinion, I prefer this, or I always considered that this is a better option, or this is a good idea, or I feel that this is a better option, or I agree. I think the agree or disagree ones are easier, because basically less ways to go wrong. But yeah, have something prepared. Any questions regarding the main idea? Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, we're going to work on that tomorrow, but if we have some time, we're going to do some practice at the end of the session. This shouldn't be a long session, so we'll have time for at least a couple of practices. Right, so this is the most important thing, in my opinion. This is the most important part of the speaking section, because if you have a template, then you don't have to think of a structure, right? You already have the structure laid out for you. You know, you have to go straight for the main idea at the beginning, and then you know where to go after that. So yes, you saw 15 seconds to prepare for the speaking part is actually not a lot of time. It doesn't even give you enough time to just write down one idea, right? That's why some people struggled with the note taking. But yeah, so having a template really makes things easier. So yeah, just start with, as I told you, start with something like, I agree, or I think it's a good idea, or I prefer, or in my opinion, I think. Just go straight for that. Just be as short as you can with the main idea. And then the structure is really simple, right? It's reason one, example. Reason two, example, right? And the one you can, I don't know, leave hanging if you run out of time is the second example, right? But as long as you have your main idea clear, you have at least two reasons and one example, you should be good to go. That should be a good answer, right? So work on this template. We're going to look at it. I usually work with a template on my in my piece of paper, because yeah, it just, I don't know, for me it works to see something already written, so it just helps me to have my thoughts more organized, I think. But yeah, just this is the most common template for your answers. If you check other resources, if you check on YouTube, there are quite a lot of YouTubers that do advice and just, I don't know, tell their experience and how to answer these questions. If you look at them, they all work with a similar template, up to 90% the same. So it's basically the best proven way of answering this kinds of questions. And regarding the notes, well, regarding the answer in itself, basically, it's just the main thing you have to do is choose a position, as we saw yesterday. If you get stuck in the middle, it becomes harder to give reasons on why you're in the middle. So it's always better to just go for one position, even if you are not, I don't know, if you don't agree 100% with that position, just go for it. It's just a test. They're just asking to see how well you can communicate ideas. So they're not evaluating your values, or they're not evaluating how you are as a person. It's not a reflection of what you actually think or your principles, or I don't know, the way you choose to live. Just a test on how well you can speak English, right? So yeah, just choose a position. Even if you're not too convinced for it, just be convinced for the next minute or so, and then you can just move past it. So what I do in my notes, I always write my main idea. So in this case, it's whether I prefer option A or option B, or whether I agree or disagree, or whether I think it's a good idea or not. As I told you, my strategy for this, and this is personal, you don't have to follow this, but it works for me. It works quite well. So always go for the first option. Just don't think about it. Just go for the first option. You eliminate the choice. So the choice is unnecessary because, well, there are no right, no wrong answers. So yeah, just basically go for the main for the first one, or go for the second one. I don't know, whichever is easier for you. And then yeah, what I do is I just put a space for my reason. I try to be really concise. In my note taking, just basically write, scribble some things. I'm going to show you some examples of how I take my notes. And yeah, be really mindful of the time, basically. So this is an example of how I would take my notes. Of course, this part where I've written is usually what would be on my piece of paper. So the question says, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Why or why not? Use details and examples to support your answer. And that's another thing that we're going to discuss a bit further down the presentation. So you don't have to wait for the 15 seconds to start writing down your answer, right? So the way that the test works is that they're going to read it for you. They're going to say, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Why or why not? Use details and examples to support your answer. So that's like what, 3 or 4 seconds? 3 or 4 seconds that can make a difference when you're making your notes. So whenever you see it, just go for the main topic, just go for the main thing, just read it, understand it, and then go for it. So while the system is telling you, you have 15 seconds to prepare your answer, so you're already working on it. You're already just beating the clock, right? You don't have to, it's not a race where if you just go early, it doesn't count. You just have to make the best of your time. So if you just go for the main thing, read it, and then just start writing on your thing, you can. It's your call. You have an extra 3-4 seconds, which is like a third of the time they give you to prepare. So you have basically 30% more. And yeah, it's a good trick. So what I do, for example, in this one is they ask me whether I agree or disagree. So A means I agree. D would mean I disagree, but I always go for the first option. For learning skill jobs, workplace training is better than university education. So okay, so I just concentrate, I agree, I concentrate on my reasons. So my first reason was there's more true experience. So I just wrote true X. So as long as it makes sense for you, no one's going to look at your notes and say, oh, okay, these notes are not good, or you cannot read what it says here. No one looks at your notes. They just look at what you answer, what you put on the system. So as long as it makes sense for you, it's good. So it says more through experience, and my example is this one. So it says on-site, I think it was on-site experience. So that was my example. And the second one is less time. And my example was that it takes 5 years to get a university degree, usually in our countries. So yeah, so how I would answer this would be something like this. So I'm going to have a timer here. Right. So how I would answer this question would be something like that. And yeah, don't rush. You don't need to rush. 45 seconds is more than enough to do the whole thing. So I would start with, yeah. In my opinion, I agree that workplace training is better for learning job skills because it gives you more experience on the job. There was this one time where I was learning how to put together some piece of equipment, and I learned better when I did it with some workmates that had more experience in the area. So it really helped me. The second reason why I think this is a good idea is because it takes less time. For example, for my university degree, it took me 5 years to get it. Whereas if I wanted to start on a more technical field, 5 years would be way too much time, especially at my age. And you have 45 seconds. You got enough time to just prepare an answer. Just, yeah, when I wrote this thing for the example, I don't remember what I was thinking at the moment, but yeah, I just improvised and I said, yeah, I was working on a piece of machinery. I haven't assembled really a piece of machinery with a group before, done it in my spare time, but yeah, just, it doesn't have to be true. It just has to make sense. It just has to basically follow the structure and basically serve as a, I don't know, as an argument for your position, basically. Right? So do you have questions? Do we have comments, perhaps? Cool. If you have anything you want to say, or something perhaps that you're struggling with and you want, I don't know, perhaps my opinion or your classmates' opinion, just let me know. These sessions are for you to get more comfortable with the format. So if you have doubts or you have something that perhaps you don't agree with, because even though this is a template, it's not the only way of answering this question. So as long as you give out your reasons and you give some examples along the way, you can do it. As you saw, I didn't necessarily follow the script. I didn't go. The first reason I think this is a good idea is, so I just went, I think this is better because, and I just went for my first reason. So yeah, sometimes you can improvise. Well, you can always improvise, and you should always improvise. So the template is a good structure on how to basically get some order into your thoughts, but it's not the only way of doing it, right? Right. So some tips for note taking. Basically, as you saw in my example, don't use full words or phrases. Don't try to write down what you want to say. It's a really bad practice. You won't have enough time. So just try to use symbols, try to use abbreviations, if it makes sense for you, just think of it as a placeholder. Do you know what a placeholder is? It's I don't know, a placeholder is something that reminds you of something, right? It's a symbol that for your head, it doesn't even have to be words, really. If you have more of a picture-based memory, some people do. For example, you can put, I don't know, like a circle or a star, right? That reminds you what you're thinking of at that moment. That works for you even better. What I do is I just write the first part of the word, or I just write the initials or something like that. So yeah, use symbols, use abbreviations. You won't have enough time to write the whole thing down. So yeah, basically, prepare the template before the question begins. So you're going to have some time while you're settling in. So just scribble something so you're not writing on just a blank piece of paper. I'm going to show you what a template I would use would be in the next slide. And yeah, basically, as I said before, start your notes as soon as you can. You don't have to wait for the 15 seconds to do it. If you can just go straight for the question, read it, and while the voice is reading the statement, you're already working. That's even better. So yeah, just those are my main tips for your notes, because as you saw, 15 seconds is really not enough time. It's incredibly short, and yeah, just sometimes it's you just waste more time trying to write everything down. Right, so this is a template I would usually use. So I have M for my main idea, 1 for my first reason and then the example, 2 for my second reason and then my second example. So I would probably just scribble it down while I'm sitting down and just getting everything ready. So it's all good. We're going to work on the templates for task 2 to 4 because they're slightly different. Because don't forget, this is the independent one, and the integrated ones are slightly different. So you'll have more time this time. This is the one actually that gives you the less time to prepare, because for the other ones, you're basically just you have time to read a reading passage, to listen to a lecture, or to do both. Whereas in this one, basically they tell you what the topic is and they ask for your opinion, right? So yeah, so this would be like a template I would use. You don't have to use it necessarily. It helps me, but you can go without it, right? Yeah, just helps to have. If you prefer to just put some bullet points, then do it. Yeah, just get yourself some structure. That's always a good practice. All right, this is another example. For example, for a question of task 1. So it says, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Children should help their parents with the household chores as soon as they're old enough. Use details and examples in your response. So this is from one of the examples of the previous section. So yeah, I use this template. So my main point, my main idea is I agree with it. As I told you, I always agree with it. So my first reason, it says RESP, but it's basically responsibility. And in example, I just scribbled room. So that's room for me. And the second one is in-depth for independence. And it just says live abroad, which basically is just refers to living abroad. And that's one thing I struggled with the first time I went to live outside of my country. So yeah, just even though you don't have to tell the whole story, it's good to just relate to some previous experiences that you had. Just if you want to modify them a bit more so they can fit your answer. So yeah, so I'm going to give you an example of how I would answer this question. Right, I'm going to put the timer on here. Sweet. Okay. So it says, do you agree or disagree with the fact that children should help their parents? Okay, so we'll begin. I agree with the idea that children should help their parents with household chores as soon as they're old enough. The first reason for this is that it teaches them responsibility. For example, when I was growing up, my mom would always make me tidy my room. Do my bed. And I think that was a really good practice because it helped me to be responsible for my own space. The second reason for this, I think it teaches them independence. For example, when I went to live abroad, the first time I went to Chile when I was doing my undergrad, it was really important for me to know how to do the basic chores around the house, so I could basically spend less time doing it and focusing more on my studies. And there we go. That's 45 seconds. You got enough time for 2 reasons, 2 examples, and your main idea. And I didn't have to rush it too much. I just spoke at a good pace. In my case, I find it useful to use my hands while I'm talking. It helps me with rhythm. I know what you guys think. If it sounds helpful or something you want to add, perhaps, or perhaps some feedback on the kind of answers that I just gave. Perhaps you thought you couldn't understand them too well, or you thought I was speaking too fast. What's your opinion? Come on, you've been awfully quiet today. Come on, I feel like I'm talking to a wall. Just interact with me a bit. Just humor me a bit. Okay, cool. I guess you'll have enough time to talk tomorrow when we do the talking. I'm just going to be sitting here, writing down on my notebook and judging you. So cool. It's all good. I'm not a vengeful person. Yeah. Righto. Right. So some tips to come up with reasons. So I think this is important because, well, sometimes it's hard to think because you're just so constrained with time that you cannot think of reasons easy enough. So these are some tips that help me when I do this. The first one is, yeah, just always keep this in mind and remember that they are not evaluating whether you're right or not, or wrong, right? They're not judging if you're right or wrong. They're not saying, oh, this is a really bad person because he disagrees with the fact that children should have chores, or he is an awful person for thinking that children should do things around the house. They don't care about that. They just care on how well you can communicate your opinion on something. So yeah, just get that out of your head. So that's not helpful. Even if you're not completely convinced on the reasons why you're supporting certain positions. For example, in my case, in the last example, my experience was actually completely different. It's not that I disagree. I think it's a good idea, but I just didn't do it when I was a child. We were lucky enough to have some help around the house, so I actually never did my room. The first time I went to live abroad, I went to do some part of my studies in Chile, and I had some theoretical knowledge on how to boil water. Like I knew you had to put it on the fire, but I've never done it before. So yeah, so even though I had no real basis on how to support this statement, because I wasn't actually raised that way. I just came up with something. Like I just came up with what sounds good and what I should have had when I was a kid. Like yeah, it does teach responsibility. Perfect, because yeah, you should be accountable for your room. I know now that, like now I know that after I've lived alone for quite a while, I know that if I don't clean up my room, it's going to stay a mess, and no one's going to come to clean it up for me if I don't do it, right? So yeah, basically my reason came from that. So, and the second one gives you independence. Yes, because well, it's something that I was lacking. I actually wasted quite a lot of time trying to learn how to cook, and just, I don't know, got a bit malnourished because I always burnt up my food or something like that. So I wish I would have learned how to do that. I wouldn't have had to call my mom from a different country and saying, yeah, so how do you turn on the washing machine? because I wouldn't have been so useless, right? So yeah, just use your personal experience and just use your common sense and just put yourself in the position. Just come up with easy arguments. So these ones were basically two words: responsibility and independence. It's easy enough, right? I'm not complicating myself. I'm not saying teaches them a sense of belonging into their own environment, and the school of what's the school of child raising, the Montessori one. So according to the Montessori theory, children should have these experiences. So I'm not going into depth on this, right? I'm not reviewing literature, right? I'm not saying, according to I don't know, Faulkner et al. In 2013, it is not that level of academic knowledge that you have to have. You just have to be able to come up with arguments that support your choice, right? So they have to be easy enough. They have to be really simple, so you can come up with something that makes sense and that you can come up with an example afterwards, right? The third point, and I think this one is really, really important, especially because I saw that most of you got nervous and just tried to use words that perhaps you're not too comfortable with. Just use the language you're comfortable with. As long as you don't curse or you don't use too many, I don't know, too much street language. As long as you keep it relatively casual, it's good to go. You just have to use language you're comfortable with. If you think you're being too repetitive, just use a synonym. So I don't know, just don't say in my opinion and in my opinion as well. Just say in my opinion, and I personally prefer, or I consider that, right? So just go for synonyms. But yeah, just use language you're comfortable with. Don't overcomplicate yourself. You don't have to show off to anyone, or you don't have to impress anyone with how many words you know. As long as you get the message across in a clear manner, you're good to go. And yeah, and the fourth one is don't overcomplicate your answer. As I was mentioning before in my example, don't say the Montessori school of thought teaches us that, and there's evidence proven by certain experiments that actually children within the age of 3 to 7 benefit from a larger brain development compared to their peers. That's overcomplicating yourself, right? It's true, and it can come across as a good answer if you're comfortable enough with the language. But you have 45 seconds, and you have 15 seconds to prepare. So don't try to impress anyone. Just concentrate on being clear, being concise, and getting enough reasons and enough examples in so that your answer basically meets all the criteria, right? You'll have plenty of time to impress people when you're actually working somewhere where you actually have to speak the language, or when you're doing your postgrad studies or your undergrad studies in a university abroad. You have plenty of time to do it when you actually have to do it. And it's always good to have good vocabulary. But here, just basically work with what you have, and yeah, just keep it simple. Questions? Sweet. So I've got another example here on how my reasons would work. It's just it's a really easy subject. Some people prefer activities outdoors, and some prefer to stay indoors for recreation. Which one do you prefer? So in my notes it says my main idea is that I prefer to be outside. The first one is health, and the second one is the immune system. Yes, that's what this IMM stands for, immune system. So in this case, for example, when I was taking my notes, because I actually did it, I gave myself only 15 seconds so I could do it. I just put bike because, well, I like to do cycling. I'm going to go through my reasoning. So I think going outside is good for your health, and I just put the bike. So okay, I'm just going to think of something related to my bike, and that's good. And with the immune system, I just put vitamin D. Just going outside actually makes your body generate some vitamin D. So yeah, just those were my main reasons. Really simple. Perhaps I went a bit overboard with the second reason with the immune system, but that's what came to my mind at the moment, right? So just work with what you have. Don't argue with yourself too much. So the way I would answer this question would be the following. Where is the thingy? Did I close it? Jesus. All right. There we go. Right. So the way I would answer this question would be as following. I personally prefer outdoor activities than indoor activities. This is for two reasons mainly. The first reason is for health reasons. I think that doing outside activities like perhaps going cycling is good for your heart, and it's good for your lungs and for all your system, and it keeps your body oxygenated. And the second reason, I think it's a good thing to do for your immune system. Doctors say that going outside for at least 15 minutes helps with the intake of vitamin D, because your body needs it to process it. And if you have the opportunity, I think it's always good to go outside and get some sun and some exercise done. Right, perfect. So yeah, basically I just improvised a bit with the bike thing. Just mentioned my heart and my lungs. I didn't say it's good for your cardiovascular health, which is something I should have done because it's the most correct. It's the most correct term to refer to it. But yeah, I just didn't think of the moment of the word at the moment, so I just went for it's good for your heart, it's good for your lungs, it's good to get your body oxygenated. So yeah, you see, easy language, simple reasons, and I managed to get my point across. Questions, comments? Have someone that wants to give it a go? Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to give it a go. Yeah, as you saw, it's just practice. It's just practice. So I've done this so many times. I remember this was the thing that I was scared of the most when I did my TOEFL the first time. So I just did it all the time. I just did it time and time again. So it just comes second nature to me now. So I actually don't have to think about it. I'm just used to it. I'm just used to this way of thinking. So just my brain just goes straight for, okay, reason one, example, reason two, examples. So just, for example, this bike, this example, it just says bike. It doesn't mention anything about my heart or my lungs or just oxygenation. So it just says bike. Just go for something that reminds you of something, right? Cool. And I think this is one of the last ones as well. So some tips for coming up with examples, which is something that I've seen some of you struggled yesterday. I think this is the harder one because you actually to come up with an example. I mean, coming up with a reason is hard enough, but just coming up with an example. So yeah, basically my suggestion for this, and as you saw on the previous example, just think of something fast. If it's outdoor activities, first thing that came to my mind is bike, because I really like cycling. So just bike. Just go with something that is relatable to you. So you can actually come up with something or just make something up easier, right? So yeah, just think of something fast. As you saw in the previous one, I just put bike. I didn't put that. I knew sort of where I was going to, how I was going to connect health with cycling, but just I didn't write it down. I knew I could come up with it along the way, so I just did. The second advice, and this one is really really important, is use a personal example. So yeah, as you may have known, I didn't say, well, I actually did say in the second one, doctors recommend that going outside to get vitamin D, it helps to get vitamin D. But yeah, that's like a second case scenario. You should always try to go with personal examples, at least for one of your examples. So for the first one, I like cycling because it helps me with my lungs, it helps me with my heart. So you just give an example. So always try to get at least the first one related to you. Just say something like, when I was younger, or sometimes when I'm on the weekend, or sometimes when I'm resting, or when I'm working, or when I study for something, because they're going to perhaps ask you, like, there's a high chance that they're going to ask something related to study. So when I study, I prefer, because one time I was studying for an exam. Doesn't have to be true, but as long as it's personal, it's always better. So that's a good advice. Just always try to make it personal. Try to make it about yourself or someone you know. Just use your cousin or your brother, your sister, even if you don't have brothers or sisters, if you're just an only child, just say, there was this one time my brother, he was playing with some bees and he got stung. Didn't happen. Doesn't have to be true. It just has to come out fast and easy. Just if I think in my case, I wasn't the best child growing up. So me and my siblings would always get into troubles with my parents. So I had to come up with excuses and stop really fast. So I think that's why I'm really good with this. So when I was growing up, basically learned how to basically put excuses to get off the punishment. So yeah, if that helps you there, it can help you here as well. So yeah, just come up with something. Doesn't have to be true. Now, as my third point says, it doesn't have to be true. Just make up something. Just keep it short and to the point. So as I said, for example, in the example with the chores, so you don't have to say, for example, there was this, for example, as some studies show, children from 3 to 5 years actually benefit from a greater brain development if they are in charge of doing some essential chores around the house. It's a good example. It supports your argument, but it's too long and it's too complicated. It's true. The Montessori school actually has proven that children that are forced, or not forced, but are encouraged to do chores actually develop way better than children that don't. But yeah, it's too long. It's too long an example. It takes precious time out of your second reason. It's not worth it. Just say something like, well, yeah, when I was growing up, my mom would always make me tidy up my room. So I actually got the habit, and I think that made me a more responsible adult. Which is what I would say if I actually done it when I was a child. But yeah, so it is what it is, right? Questions, comments. I think the examples are the things some people are struggling with the most. So question, comments. Yeah, we still have some time. We still have like 7 minutes. So yeah, okay. So I'm going to do one last example of how I would answer this one, and then I'm going to just, I don't know, ask you for examples on this. Okay. So I'm going to need at least 2 or 3 people that can come up with an example really quick. Okay, so I'm going to put on my timer. Jesus Christ, did I close it again? Right. So the question says, do you think it's a good idea to forbid children from having cell phones at an early age? As always, I always go with agree. My first reason says it's addictive, and I just put 8 hours. I don't remember why. And here it says social, but I skipped the letter. But yeah, you're supposed to say social and not friends. So okay, let's see how this goes. In my opinion, I think it's a good idea that children shouldn't have cell phones at an early age. This is for many reasons. The first reason is that I think cell phones and usage of social media can become really addictive. I had this cousin that she got gifted a tablet when she was 4 years old, and she spends up to 8 hours on it. And I think that's way too much, and it can be detrimental to her development. And I think it also affects your social skills. For example, some kids can be too focused on their cell phones or tablets to actually make friends and learn how to socialize for the future. And yeah, there we go. I actually had no idea. In this one, I spent way too much time on my first example, but I managed to basically get the second reason really fast, so I could have more time for my second example, right? So always, yeah, try to work on your pacing. Try to work on how many seconds you have tops for each section. I know that if I arrive to my second reason with less than 15 seconds, then I have to really cut it short. So yeah, if I have less than 15 seconds for my second reason and my example, I know that probably I'm going to have to sacrifice some, like either the example or just the length of the reason. So yeah, in this case, my reasoning was really short. I just said it can affect your ability to become more social or something like that, right? So it's just really quick, basically. All right. So while I throw the poll, I need 2 or 3 volunteers that can come up with an example for this case, right? Who wants to do it? All right, I'm just going to choose someone random then. Jose. Can you come up with a reason and an example? What was that? You're on a call. You're on a call? All right. All right, someone else then. Who wants to do it? Gloria.
Okay, teacher. Okay. I think it's so good idea to for cell phone, because the cell phone is so addictive, and the cell phone affect the child development. For example, I know a child always use cell phones, and the child have more problems with speaking or learning.
Okay, good.
I think that.
Good. Some pointers. So you actually gave your 2 reasons together. Just says it becomes more addictive and it can affect development, right? So you have 2 reasons, just go 1 example, 2 example, right? And your example was actually good, but just try to make it more personal. Try to say, my brother, my little brother, spends quite a lot of time and he actually doesn't speak too well now. But yeah, it was good. It was a really good use of an example. But yeah, it was actually good. Be a bit more careful with your grammar, and you're good to go. All right, who else wants to go for it? Shadia, because you weren't here yesterday. You want to come up with a reason and an example?
Okay, I'm gonna try. Well, I think it's good that children can have cell phones because it could affect his mind, their minds. For example, I have two nieces, they are I'm sorry.
No, just go for it. You're doing great.
All the time they want to see our cell phones, and it can be bad for her mind.
Okay, good. That was good. So you see, it's tough at the beginning, right? It's tough when you do it for the first time because you actually have to. But actually, it was good. It was a good use of a word, even though mind is not it's not necessarily incorrect. It just sounds a bit off. Yeah, it was good. But you can say something like, for example, in your example, and they ask for phones all the time, and that can be annoying. So yeah, no, it was good. It was a very good example. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good. So do we have time for one more? I don't think we do. But before we finish, I just need to take a quick screenshot of this. Oh, Jesus Christ. All right, don't go. I just need to take it from, for some reason, my screenshot is not working too well. Right. So that was it for attendance. And do we have any questions or any comments before we finish?
I don't have teacher.
Sorry?
No.
Okay, we don't have questions. Cool. Right, so I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to prepare some more exercises so that we can work on. But yeah, just try to practice, try to get as much practice done as you can. And yeah, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, teacher.
Bye, teacher.
Bye-bye.
Bye, teacher. Take care.